the first year was basically paperwork. The second year was trying to get like an online profile of Jay and I put together for the birth mom to kind of see who we are, you know, what our personalities are like, what we stand for, what things we like to do. That was a big part of that too. And basically, once you're ready to present, you've got all your paperwork in order and all your T's crossed and I's dotted, you get a profile of the birth mom.
I was working from home and we get a call from the agency. Jenny comes running out to the shed that I used to work out of in the backyard, and she says, "We've got a match." The birth is supposed to be in another 7 to 10 days from now. So you can imagine this is like, goodness, we have no time to get ready here.
He was overjoyed about it too, and emotions are running high, and okay, we have a week to get ready for this baby. And they call us back about 2 hours later and said, the birth mom is in labor now. You're gonna need to get on a plane and come to Baltimore. So we had basically 24 hours notice. So we booked the first plane we could out that following Sunday, and we traveled to Baltimore to meet London.
You know, Jenny and I were given a bit of a picture of what it might look like. I don't think you're ever fully prepared for what happens if you have a child born with neonatal abstinence. And this child, her birth mother had been on methadone for 10 years. So what we were told was limited drug use turned out to be someone that had been on heroin, been in a methadone program for a decade or more. Frankly, was also doing street drugs, was smoking, drinking, all of the kind of things that wouldn't be ideal for a birth mother. But so that started to kind of come out, and that's part of an unfortunate part of the process that you never really know. So we got to the hospital 24 hours after the baby was born.
Of course, meeting her was the most joyful moment of our lives. But within about 12 hours, she started showing withdrawal symptoms.
And it was very clear right then that the baby was going through withdrawals. And they, for the first 24 hours, really frankly don't do much for the child, because you don't go through withdrawals right away, obviously. They kind of have to let that bear itself out. But after 24 hours or so, they started to administer morphine.
She would shake, she had tremors. Her little hands and feet were just tight to the fact where she would have almost like carpet burns on her little elbows, and her fingers would kind of clench in so hard that she'd have little marks where her fingernails were, because she was that tight. And it affects every part of her system, her cardiovascular, her endocrine, everything is on just high alert. She would vomit, all day long. She would have this black sludge that would come out of her system all day long. She ran fevers. The tremors were really hard. The symptoms kind of started and they would escalate. And what we were trying to do is, and we learned this through the process as parents and as the nurses and the doctors walked us through, you were trying to keep her from escalating, because escalating from, say, the high-pitched crying to the vomiting to the diarrhea to the tremors could lead up to a seizure. And thank God she never reached that point, because that would have been really bad. That could have had some long-term effects on this little life. But thank God that she never went through that. The high-pitched crying was really tough too. Even as an adoptive mom, you have that maternal instinct to want to bob your baby up and down. You can't do that with a child going through neonatal abstinence syndrome. It is irritating to them. It's overstimulating. They need dark, quiet, silence, very tight holds, which again is just, it's backwards from what you think you should do as a mom. You couldn't stroke her at all because it felt like you were scratching her, because her system was so messed up that the overstimulation was just, and that would start the process of the high-pitched crying all the way up to the tremors. So they started giving her morphine every 3 hours, which was heartbreaking to see. I had to give my child morphine for the first 6.5 weeks of her life, every 2 to 3 hours. She didn't have the ability to feed when she was first born, so an infant's natural reaction to be able to suck on a bottle, she didn't have that because, again, her system was fighting withdrawal so bad. She was taking 4 ounces every 2 hours, literally feeding herself because she was burning so many calories from doing this all day long. The morphine would help calm her down to help her to sleep. And she got graded on a scale, so to speak. So it could go from 1 to 22, I think the nurses said, and it was dependent on what her symptoms looked like for that 2-3 hour period. So you want to try to keep it in the lower numbers. She had some 2s and some 4s and some 6s, and then she had some 14s. The highest that the nurses told us that they ever saw at the hospital was, I think it was a 20, and that baby didn't make it. That was scary when she started getting up in the teens, and we just prayed and prayed and prayed that God would just take this from her. And it took a long time, 6.5 weeks in a NICU, in a quiet room, away from your family, away from your friends, away from your home. It's a really hard thing to do, but it took a long time, but London really came through. She's a different baby now. We're just so thankful that she has no lasting symptoms of what she went through.
It's just an amazing feeling knowing the courage that this 15-pound human being has shown during that period and how she's grown. I'm just really proud to be her dad.